and when we look at the numbers that we have, and at this point in time almost 5,000 people currently in direct provision, and I have to say, in my view, they do exist in a dehumanising environment. They are unable to work, they are unable to attend third-level education, and the most of them, while acknowledging the work that has gone on in Mosney, can't cook for their own families. And they do receive a very paltry amount of money, €19.10 per adult and €15.60 per child per week. And in a lot of occasions, that money actually has to go towards food, towards school books, towards school trips and outings for the children. So it's a very small amount of money. The figures that I have in relation to those that are in direct provision are slightly different to your own, Minister. The figures that I have are 40% of asylum seekers are in direct provision for 5 years, and I acknowledge that has improved, and some 20% for over 7 years. But I do feel it has improved in the recent past. No matter what, the damage that any long-term stay in these centres are doing is absolutely incalculable. And the key issues facing these people in direct provision are the duration of the stay, the impact of the environment that it has on family life, and the right to work. I read with great sadness a recent newspaper article about a 16-year-old girl, a victim of violence in her own home country, chronically traumatised and suffering greatly in a direct provision centre in Ireland. Diagnosed with psychosis, this teenager's mental health deteriorated to the extent that she has had to be made a ward of court as her health was in serious danger. And this young girl and the 1,600 or more children who have grown up in the direct provision system have endured overcrowded conditions, social exclusion and psychological damage associated with living in institutionalised accommodation. We as a country can do better, and we must do better by these young people. The current system is not fit for purpose, and it needs to be replaced to enable asylum seekers to live with a greater degree of respect and dignity. These two factors combined mean that, in reality, by the time people currently leave direct provision, they have become completely de-skilled, demotivated, and find it really difficult to enter the labour market. In fact, the direct provision system, as it is, creates huge dependency. I think it is important also to increase the weekly allowance to the amounts recommended by the McMahon report. An increase like this, I think, would have a real and tangible impact on the quality of life for those living in direct provision, allowing them a greater degree of choice and improving their own ability to participate in the community within which they live. I think it is hugely important that we begin to create a system that allows families and vulnerable people to have access to independent, not communal living following a short stay in centre-type accommodation. Direct provision is no place for families and has been consistently criticised. In the longer term, I think we absolutely have to design a more humane system. One of the key differences of our systems when compared to other EU countries is the fact that it is operated for profit. The aim has to be to create a blended system, like that in Portugal, where asylum seekers following a short initial stay in a reception centre, where their needs are assessed by an assigned caseworker who deal with all aspects of their claims, and then they can move out into community self-contained units. I just want to welcome the announcement also that you mentioned that legal issues around the extension of the remit of the offices of the Ombudsman for Children to include access for residents in direct provision centres has now been clarified. I think that is hugely important. As the Children's Ombudsman has pointed out, 1,400 children are spending the formative years of their lives in direct provision in circumstances that inhibit their potential to thrive and curtail their full enjoyment of basic rights. And I want to acknowledge also that while the current housing shortage clearly creates a huge challenge in being able to access accommodation, there are also many other hurdles, particularly around education and the right to work. And having endured years of living in the system, and it is known to negatively affect mental health, child well-being and family life, people are largely left to fend for themselves once they receive their status. Finally, I just want to mention briefly the Air Powell Centre in Newbridge, which is where I live, and I visited actually on Monday. And at this point, there are 68 people living there, including 7 children under the age of 18. And I have to say, you know, even being in there on Monday, I was just very struck by the energy of the young people living there. And there's a lot of young men who have just completed coaching courses with the local sports partnership, and they were incredibly enthusiastic about wanting to contribute to their community. And the supervisors in the sports partners scheme would absolutely love to bring these young men out into the community to work with voluntary organisations, both sporting and otherwise. We have some festivals coming up, but unfortunately, yeah, I know that. No, we've agreed it.
Oh, that's okay.
But
far be it from me to interfere in the internal.
Well, you're interfering now. But due to the Garda vetting restrictions, they were unable to do so. And I think that's wrong. They want to work, they want to participate in society, but they're prohibited from joining the workforce. Aissa Sow, who lived in the particular centre, fled from Guinea without her family in 2011, and she was interviewed recently publicly. And her description of feeling like a prisoner in direct provision is a reminder of just how hard the process is. Her story ended happily, as she was granted asylum and has now applied for her mother to join her. So she's lucky. There's no doubt that people in direct provision have sought asylum to protect themselves and their children in the hope of providing a more secure future. And in direct provision at this point, they are denied the capacity to live as a family, left waiting indefinitely for this future to begin, and we need to do better. Thank you.